everybody, it's Rory from A&S Gear. We've got a trigger to install today. So this is the brand new ignition trigger from Exalt, and this is for the EMEK 100s, the EMGs. I think that's it. Yeah, EMEK 100s and EMGs, or used to be the EMF. So this is a replacement for the trigger that comes with it, which the trigger that comes with it doesn't have any adjustments on it. It is just what it is. So this all aluminum trigger comes with bearings in it. So it's got a smoother pivot on it. It's got 3 points of adjustment. We've got pre-travel, post-travel, and activation adjustments, which are all controlled through these screws right here. We've got 2 right here and then 1 that comes up through the top right here as well. So if we adjust this front one, and it's going to control where the trigger starts. So our pre-travel, by screwing this further in, the screw is going to pop out of the top and it's going to push against the inside, and it's going to make the trigger want to pivot backwards and sit like that in a pre-travel, in a pre-pull position. This lower one right here at the bottom controls how far the trigger can move before it stops, before it hits up against the frame and doesn't want to move anymore. And then this middle one controls our activation point. So this screw in the middle actually pushes against the valve on the inside and controls when the trigger contacts the valve and makes it activate. So 3 points of adjustment through there. We have this pin, which is designed specifically to run with these bearings that are inside of here. So when we pop the pin out of the one we have, we do not want to use this pin. We want to use the pin that comes with it. All right, so first, to get it out, we're going to kind of look at our trigger. And if you look closely at the pin that is in the trigger from factory, you can see that one side of the pin has knurling on it, or it has steps or ridges on it. And that's this side of the pin right here. The other side of the pin is completely smooth. So we always want to push from the opposite side of the knurling, okay? Reason being, the knurling is there to, when we put the pin in, that pushes against the plastic or the composite frame, and it keeps it from falling out. If we try to push that through, we're basically trying to take this rough knurled section and push it through the bearings, through the trigger, through whatever, and we'll end up damaging it. We want to push it from the opposite side of the knurling so that it just pops right out. So we're going to look at our pin from the beginning and determine, okay, our knurling is on this side, so we're going to flip it over and we're going to push out from the other side. So let's get, I'm just going to use an Allen key. Typically with the Planet guns, the knurling or the pins are not that hard to pop out, so we can just push it out. We don't need a hammer or a punch or anything like that. So that is out. Now we take our 1/8. We're going to undo the rear frame screw, the front frame screw, a little bit more. We're going to take our magazine out, and we're going to take our frame off. Now from here, you've got 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 screws hold this plate on the top, which pushes the spring down. So the return spring controls how hard the return spring, or I shouldn't say how hard, it compresses the return spring so that it pushes the trigger back. But it also has a little tab in the front, which makes the safety snap into each, both of its places. So we're going to remove those 4 screws out. And be very careful not to strip these screws. They are just threading into the composite body. So when we go to put them back in, there's no reason to just crush them in there. We're going to tighten them in, and once we feel them tighten up, we're going to leave them alone. We don't need to overdo it, because once you strip the heads on these, trying to get them out is a pain. So we don't need to do that. So our spring, which just sits right on top like that, we've popped it out. We're going to keep that to the side. They do sell spring kits, which have softer springs, harder springs, so you can control the pull of the trigger as well. We've already got our pin out, so we should just be able to take our trigger and get it right up out of there. So we pulled our trigger out. Now our safety, because our plate isn't in there, our safety can move all sorts around. It can come right out. So just be aware that your safety could move around on you when we go to put this one in. So we're going to take this, we're going to put it in, we're going to move our safety around so it allows our trigger to fit through. If we can't fit our trigger through, just keep wiggling the safety. Kind of move the trigger, get it to the point where it wants to go through there. Now we can look at the side. We can line our bearings up with our hole, put in our new pin, and push it together. Now I'm going to kind of just gently push this one on there because I'm going to take it back out again in just a second after we're done with this video. All right, so there you go. You can see our trigger working. We've got our post-travel activation and pre-travel screws, which once we put it all together and we gassed it up, then we could play around with those and kind of figure out where it needs to be. Take our spring, set it on our post right there. Take our plate, and if we look at the bottom of our plate, there's a hole, kind of like a little cup or a pocket right there. That cup or pocket is going to go over the spring and keep the spring in position. And then we can push that right down into place right there. And then we would take our screws and put them back into, and I'm going to go like with an electric drill like this, it's easy to take things out because you don't really have to worry about damaging anything. But when you're putting stuff back in, be very careful if you're going to use an electric screwdriver because it's super easy to overdo it and just strip either the head of the screw out or strip this where the screw actually threads in, and so it doesn't have any grip anymore inside there. So I'm just going to put those in a little bit so we can see our safety works, trigger works, everything's back inside of there. Then we would just go ahead and put this back on here, put our frame screws back in, and then go about playing around with our trigger and finding that perfect feel for you. It's, you know, the trigger setup is something that you want to do. It's not something that will just magically happen by putting the trigger in. You need to figure out which works best for you. But the installation is super easy. It's not hard. It takes a couple minutes. The trigger is comfortable. There's no hard edges to it. They've taken enough material out of it to make it as light as possible. They put the bearings in it. They put the adjustment screws in it. And they've made a pin specifically to run with those bearings so it's as smooth as possible. So if you've got an EMEK 100 or the EMF, EMG, whatever it happens to be, pick up one of these new triggers from Exalt, the Ignition Trigger, replace this old trigger, get with the new Ignition Triggers from Exalt. Get it today at ansgear.com.